An ambulance races to the hospital with a mysterious dog chasing behind. The heartbreaking reason for this devoted pursuit shocks everyone. And if you cherish your family and love stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and avoid 10 years of bad luck. The intersection of Commonwealth Avenue buzzed with the usual afternoon traffic when the accident happened. Jake, a middle-aged veteran with weathered features and a slight limp, collapsed near the crosswalk. Buddy, a medium-sized mixed breed with patches of brown and white fur, sat nearby on the sidewalk. His ears perked up at the sound of concerned voices gathering around his owner. The crowd grew quickly. Someone called 911, their voice sharp with urgency. Buddy remained perfectly still, his eyes fixed on Jake's unconscious form. He had been with Jake for 3 years now, ever since the day Jake found him digging through trash behind a convenience store. The sirens grew louder, their wailing cutting through the afternoon air. 2 paramedics rushed out of the ambulance, their movements quick and practiced. They checked Jake's vitals, speaking in rapid, technical terms that meant nothing to the growing audience of onlookers. Buddy's muscles tensed as he watched them lift Jake onto a stretcher. His tail, usually wagging, hung low and still. The paramedics worked efficiently, securing Jake and preparing to transport him. Buddy took a step forward, but a bystander held him back. The dog's eyes never left Jake's face, searching for any sign of consciousness. The ambulance doors slammed shut with a finality that sent a visible shudder through Buddy's frame. As the ambulance pulled away from the curb, Buddy broke free from the hand holding him back. His paws hit the pavement in a steady rhythm as he began to run. The crowd parted, some gasping as the dog weaved between cars. His focus remained absolute. The white ambulance with its flashing lights became his entire world. Clara Martinez stood on the corner, her camera bag slung over one shoulder. She had been heading to a photo shoot when the commotion caught her attention. Without hesitation, she pulled out her phone and began recording. Through her screen, she captured Buddy's desperate pursuit, his determination evident in every stride. Traffic slowed as drivers noticed the unusual chase. Buddy navigated through the gaps between vehicles, never losing sight of the ambulance. His breathing grew heavy, but his pace never slackened. Clara followed on foot, her phone steady as she documented every moment. She felt her throat tighten as she watched the dog's unwavering loyalty on display. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the streets of Boston as Buddy ran. His paws were starting to show signs of wear from the rough pavement, but he pressed on. Some pedestrians called out to him, while others tried to stop him, concerned for his safety. But Buddy remained focused on his mission, his ears forward, his eyes locked on the ambulance that carried Jake. Clara continued filming, her own breath coming in quick gasps as she tried to keep up. She captured the reactions of people on the street. The surprised faces, the pointing fingers, the expressions of concern and admiration. Through her lens, she saw more than just a dog chasing an ambulance. She witnessed a display of pure, unconditional love. As the ambulance turned onto the hospital route, picking up speed, Buddy showed no signs of giving up. His fur had become matted with sweat, his tongue lolling out as he ran. Clara knew she was witnessing something extraordinary, a moment that would touch hearts and remind people of the depth of animal loyalty. The scene unfolded like a movie, but there was nothing staged about Buddy's desperate pursuit or the raw emotion visible in his every movement. Cars honked, people shouted, but Buddy remained singularly focused on keeping the ambulance in sight, even as it began to pull further ahead in the heavy traffic. Back in our apartment that evening, Clara's hands trembled slightly as she edited the video footage. The raw emotion she had captured demanded minimal processing, just a few quick cuts to highlight the most powerful moments of Buddy's chase. She added a simple caption: "Boston street dog chases ambulance carrying owner. Never seen loyalty like this. Hashtag Buddy's journey, hashtag Boston dog." Within minutes of posting the video to her social media accounts, notifications began flooding in. The first wave came from her regular followers, photographers and local artists who appreciated her usual street photography. But soon, the video began to spread beyond her immediate circle. The share count climbed rapidly: 100, 500, 1,000. and then it exploded. Local Boston news stations picked up the story first. Their social media managers reached out to Clara, requesting permission to share the footage. She granted it, adding only one condition: that they help spread awareness about Buddy's situation. Each sharing came with new waves of engagement, comments pouring in from across the city. "Anyone seen this dog in the Beacon Hill area? My heart breaks watching this. We need to find him. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Does anyone know which hospital the ambulance was heading to?" The video's reach expanded exponentially. National news outlets began calling Clara's phone. Her Instagram followers jumped from a modest 2,000 to over 50,000 in less than 6 hours. But Clara wasn't interested in her sudden fame. She kept focusing the attention back on Buddy. A group of college students from Boston University created a Facebook group, Finding Buddy, Boston's Loyal Dog. Membership grew to 5,000 within the first day. People began posting potential sightings, sharing maps of the area where the ambulance was last seen, and organizing search parties. Sarah Chun, a sophomore veterinary student, emerged as one of the group's leaders. She coordinated with local animal shelters and veterinary clinics, creating a network of people ready to help if Buddy was found. The group established protocols for approaching him safely, understanding that he might be scared and defensive. Local businesses joined the effort. Coffee shops offered free drinks to search party volunteers. Pet stores donated food and supplies for when Buddy was found. A local printing company produced flyers with Buddy's image, captured from Clara's video. The city of Boston, usually divided by neighborhood rivalries and social boundaries, united in this singular mission. The story touched something deep in people's hearts. In a world often criticized for its disconnection and digital isolation, Buddy's pure devotion sparked a renewed faith in genuine emotion. Comments on the video came from around the globe, with people sharing similar stories of animal loyalty. Sarah organized the first official search party for the following morning. Volunteers were divided into teams, each assigned to different areas along the ambulance's likely route. They created a WhatsApp group for real-time updates and coordination. Maps were marked with grid patterns, ensuring no street would go unchecked. Meanwhile, Clara's video continued its viral journey. Television shows requested interviews, wanting to know more about the moment she captured. But she declined most appearances, preferring to join the search efforts instead. She knew the real story wasn't about her or her video. It was about Buddy and his unwavering loyalty. The night before the first organized search, the Facebook group had grown to over 15,000 members. People shared theories about where Buddy might be, analyzed the video for clues about the ambulance's direction, and posted encouraging messages. The hashtag Buddy's Journey trended nationally on Twitter, with celebrities and public figures joining the conversation. Inside Massachusetts General Hospital, Jake Matthews lay in bed 407, staring at the sterile white ceiling. The doctors had diagnosed him with a minor stroke, likely triggered by stress and his ongoing PTSD. But Jake's thoughts weren't on his medical condition. They drifted constantly to Buddy, wondering where his faithful companion might be in this vast city. The memory of how he first met Buddy played like a movie in his mind. It was during one of his darkest periods 3 years ago, when the nightmares from his service in Afghanistan were at their worst. He had found Buddy behind that convenience store, thin and scared, but with eyes that somehow reflected the same pain Jake carried inside. They had saved each other that day, though Jake never told anyone the full story. Nurse Michael Roberts noticed Jake's distraction during the evening rounds. He checked the monitors, adjusted the floor, and tried to engage in conversation, but Jake responded with only short, clipped answers. The veteran's medical charts showed a history of depression and anxiety, but this silence seemed different, more immediate, more raw. "Would you like to talk about what's bothering you?" Michael asked, preparing to note Jake's vitals. The response was a slight shake of the head. Jake turned to face the window, his shoulders tense. The city lights blinked beyond the glass, and somewhere out there, Buddy was alone. Jake's phone buzzed on the bedside table. Another message from his old army buddy, Steve Martinez. "Hey man, you're trending on social media. There's this video of your dog." Jake's hand trembled as he opened the link. The footage of Buddy running after the ambulance filled his screen, and his throat tightened at the sight. The realization that Buddy had chased him hit Jake hard. Memories flooded back. Buddy waiting by the door each morning, tail wagging. The quiet nights when nightmares struck and Buddy would rest his head on Jake's lap. The long walks through Boston Common that helped keep the darkness at bay. His companion had become more than just a pet. He was Jake's anchor to reality. More messages started coming in as people recognized him as Buddy's owner. Local news stations requested interviews, but Jake declined through the hospital staff. He wasn't ready to face cameras or questions. The guilt of leaving Buddy alone weighed heavily on his conscience, mixing with the fear that his friend might be hurt or lost. Through the hospital room's window, sirens occasionally broke the evening quiet. Each time, Jake imagined Buddy following another ambulance, searching for him. The thought made his heart monitor spike enough that Nurse Michael had to check on him again. "Your dog sounds special," Michael said, trying once more to break through Jake's silence. This time, Jake turned to face him. "He saved my life," Jake whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "More times than he knows." It was the first personal thing he'd shared since being admitted. The admission seemed to crack something open in Jake. He reached for his phone again, this time scrolling through photos of Buddy. There they were at the beach last summer, Buddy chasing waves. Another showed them hiking in the Blue Hills, Buddy's fur catching the sunlight. Each image carried a story of healing, of slow steps back toward life. Jake's dinner sat untouched on the hospital tray. His thoughts kept circling back to their morning routine. How Buddy would wait patiently while Jake took his medications, how they'd share breakfast together on the small balcony of his apartment. The ordinary moments now seemed precious, their absence acute. As night fell over Boston, Jake finally allowed himself to cry. Not the quiet tears of someone maintaining control, but deep, racking sobs that brought Nurse Michael running. The emotional dam had broken, releasing not just worry for Buddy, but years of stored pain. Through his tears, Jake began to talk about Buddy, about the war, about everything he'd been holding inside. The sun had begun to set over Boston Public Garden when Buddy finally slowed his pace. His paws air raw from running on concrete, and his muscles trembled with exhaustion. He found a quiet spot beneath a weeping willow, partially hidden from the steady stream of passing pedestrians. Harold Thompson, known to park regulars as Mr. Thompson, noticed the dog from his usual bench. At 73, he spent most evenings in the garden since losing his wife and their golden retriever Max 2 years ago. Something about Buddy's demeanor, alert but withdrawn, reminded him of Max during his final days. Drawing on decades of experience with dogs, Mr. Thompson approached slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and calm. He had seen the viral video earlier that day on his grandson's phone and recognized Buddy immediately. From his worn canvas bag, he pulled out half of his turkey sandwich, his standard evening meal in the park. "Easy there, friend," Mr. Thompson spoke softly, his voice carrying the gentle raspiness of age. He placed small pieces of turkey on the ground, creating a trail that led toward his bench. Buddy's nose twitched at the scent, but he remained cautious, his eyes darting between the food and the old man. The park had grown quieter as evening approached. The usual crowd of tourists and office workers had thinned, leaving mainly locals who knew to respect the delicate interaction unfolding near the willow tree. Mr. Thompson maintained his patient vigil, speaking in low, soothing tones about Max, about lonely evenings, about the comfort of shared silence. Gradually, Buddy's hunger overcame his wariness. He approached the offerings, accepting each piece of turkey with gentle care. Mr. Thompson noticed the dog's impeccable manners, another sign that somewhere, someone had loved this animal deeply. As Buddy drew closer, the old man could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the same kind of bone-deep weariness he often saw in his own reflection. Their quiet communion was interrupted by excited voices approaching from the park entrance. A group of young people, wearing matching blue t-shirts with Buddy Search Team printed on them, rounded the corner. They carried water bottles, dog treats, and first aid supplies, clearly part of the organized search effort that had mobilized across social media. Buddy tensed at the sudden activity, but surprisingly, he didn't retreat. Instead, he moved closer to Mr. Thompson, as if drawing strength from their newly formed connection. The old man placed a weathered hand on Buddy's head, feeling the subtle tremors that still ran through the dog's body. Sarah Chun, leading the search group, recognized Buddy immediately from Clara's video. She signaled her team to stop, understanding that rushing forward might spook him. They watched as Mr. Thompson continued to share his sandwich with Buddy, the simple act of feeding becoming a bridge between past and present, loss and hope. He's been through quite a journey, Mr. Thompson addressed the group, his voice carrying the weight of experience. Sometimes the strongest bonds are forged in moments of shared pain. The young volunteers listened respectfully, recognizing the wisdom in his words. The search team approached one by one, following Mr. Thompson's lead and offering gentle words and careful movements. Buddy accepted their presence with growing confidence, though his eyes still occasionally scanned the park entrance, as if expecting Jake to appear at any moment. As night settled over the garden, the group faced a decision. The local shelter had offered space, but Mr. Thompson surprised himself by volunteering to take Buddy home. "We understand each other," he explained simply, and something in his tone made the others nod in agreement. The old man and the loyal dog had found something precious in their shared moment under the willow, a recognition of kindred spirits, both carrying the weight of separation from those they loved. The next morning found Buddy surrounded by the growing support group at the park. Word had spread quickly about his locat, Ion, and people gathered with a mix of curiosity and compassion. Clara stood at a distance, her camera capturing candid moments of connection between the community and this dog who had captured the city's heart. The transformation in Buddy was subtle but noticeable. Though still vigilant, he accepted attention from the volunteers with increasing ease. Mr. Thompson remained close by, a steady presence that seemed to anchor Buddy in the present moment. The old man shared stories of his time with Max, and the volunteers listened, understanding that this was about more than just finding a lost dog. It was about healing, connection, and community. Clara's mind raced with possibilities as she watched the scene unfold. She had been researching Jake's situation through her media contacts and discovered he was a veteran struggling with medical bills even before this recent hospitalization. The story had all the elements needed to mobilize public support: a loyal dog, a veteran in need, and a community coming together. "What if we organized a fundraiser?" Clara proposed to the group, her journalist instincts recognizing the potential impact. Not just for Buddy, but for Jake's medical expenses too. The suggestion sparked immediate interest. Sarah Chin quickly pulled out her laptop, creating a draft event page, while others brainstormed ideas. Mr. Thompson, drawing from his years of experience organizing church fundraisers, offered practical advice. "We'll need permits for any public gathering," he noted, pulling out his phone to contact city officials he knew from his days working in local government. His connections proved invaluable, cutting through red tape that might have delayed their plans. The group divided into teams, each taking on different aspects of the event planning. Social media specialists among the volunteers created targeted campaigns. Local businesses, already invested in Buddy's story, pledged support. A pet supply store offered to sponsor a donation drive, while a popular food truck agreed to contribute a percentage of its sales. Clara's video had now reached national news networks, and she leveraged this attention to promote the fundraiser. She conducted interviews carefully, always steering the conversation back to the larger issues of veteran healthcare and community support. The story evolved from a viral moment into a movement for change. The planning session was interrupted by excitement as Buddy, who had been dozing near Mr. Thompson's feet, suddenly perked up at the sight of an ambulance passing the park. The group watched with mixed emotions as he trotted to the park entrance, only to return when he realized it wasn't Jake's ambulance. The moment reinforced their determination to help both dog and owner. Sarah suggested incorporating educational elements into the fundraiser about PTSD service dogs and veteran support services. Local veteran organizations, hearing about the event, offered to set up information booths. What had started as a simple fundraiser was growing into a community awareness event. Mr. Thompson, observing the expanding scope of their plans, shared his own insights about loneliness and the healing power of connection. His words resonated with the volunteers, many of whom had felt isolated in the digital age until Buddy's story brought them together. The fundraiser became a symbol of something larger, a chance to strengthen community bonds. As evening approached, the group had a solid plan in place. The event would include live music, food vendors, pet adoption services, and veteran support organizations. Local media outlets promised coverage, and social media buzz was building. Through it all, Buddy remained the heart of the story, his unwavering loyalty inspiring others to take action. The day ended with a sense of purpose and hope. Clara's final photos captured Buddy walking home with Mr. Thompson, their silhouettes framed by the setting sun. The image would later become the symbol of their fundraising campaign, a reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of healing come from unexpected connections. The fundraising event transformed Boston Common into a vibrant celebration of community spirit. Colorful tents dotted the landscape, each representing different aspects of support: veteran services, animal welfare organizations, local businesses, and community groups. The morning sun cast long shadows across banners proclaiming Buddy's Hope, uniting Boston for Jake. People began arriving early, carrying donations and sharing stories. The crowd grew steadily, drawing a diverse mix of residents from every neighborhood in Boston. Children played with therapy dogs brought by local training organizations, while veterans gathered to share experiences and resources. The atmosphere balanced celebration with purpose, maintaining focus on the serious issues underlying the festive exterior. Food trucks lined the perimeter, their owners having agreed to donate 30% of their proceeds. The aroma of various cuisines filled the air, everything from traditional New England clam chowder to international street food. Local musicians performed on a small stage, their music creating a soundtrack for the day's events. Buddy, still staying with Mr. Thompson, became the event's centerpiece. He moved through the crowd with growing confidence, accepting gentle pets and treats from visitors. The change in him was remarkable. Though he still occasionally watched passing ambulances, his anxiety had noticeably decreased. Mr. Thompson stayed close, their bond having grown stronger over the past few days. At the hospital, Jake scrolled through photos of the event on his phone, each image bringing a mix of emotions. He saw familiar faces from his neighborhood alongside strangers, all united in support of him and Buddy. A video clip showed children making get-well-soon cards, while another captured veteran support groups discussing PTSD service dog programs. The fundraiser's success exceeded expectations. Online donations poured in from across the country, complementing the local contributions. Clara's ongoing social media updates kept the momentum building, each post drawing more attention to the broader issues of veteran healthcare and animal welfare. One particularly moving moment came when a group of veterans with service dogs shared their stories. They spoke about the healing power of the human-animal bond, their words resonating with many in the crowd. Several local organizations announced new initiatives to support veteran dog partnerships, inspired by Buddy's dedication. Mr. Thompson found himself surrounded by people interested in his perspective on Buddy's journey. He shared stories of their evenings together, of quiet moments that spoke volumes about loyalty and healing. His words captured the attention of a documentary filmmaker present at the event, who began recording these impromptu testimonials. The educational aspects of the event proved particularly impactful. Information booths about PTSD, veteran services, and animal welfare drew steady crowds. Healthcare professionals volunteered their time to answer questions, while animal behaviorists explained the science behind the human-animal bond. As the day progressed, the event's impact rippled beyond its original scope. City officials attending the fundraiser began discussions about improving veteran services and animal welfare programs. Local businesses pledged ongoing support for related causes, and community groups formed new alliances. Throughout it all, Buddy remained a calm presence, his story touching hearts in ways that mere words couldn't convey. Each person who met him seemed to find their own connection to the larger narrative of loyalty, healing, and community. The event became more than a fundraiser. It evolved into a testament to the power of compassion and collective action. Jake's hospital discharge came on a Thursday morning, a week after his collapse. Doctors provided clear instructions about medication and lifestyle changes, but Jake's attention focused solely on reuniting with Buddy. Nurse Michael, who had become a friend during Jake's stay, helped him gather his belongings and shared the latest updates about the ongoing event at Boston Common. The hospital corridor seemed endless as Jake made his way toward the exit. His steps, though still somewhat unsteady, carried purpose. Each movement brought him closer to Buddy, to the community that had formed in his absence, to a version of his life he hadn't known was possible. The weight of his discharge papers felt light compared to the emotional load he carried. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual energy, but Jake noticed subtle differences. People recognized him from the news coverage, offering quiet nods of support or brief words of encouragement. A taxi driver refused payment after learning his identity, insisting it was his small contribution to Jake's story. These small gestures of kindness accumulated, creating a buffer between Jake and his usual anxiety about public spaces. As the taxi approached Boston Common, the scale of the event became clear. Crowds filled the park, moving between colorful tents and displays. Banners caught the breeze, and music drifted across the space. Jake's heart raced, not from medical concerns this time, but from a mix of gratitude and apprehension. Would Buddy remember him? Had these days of separation changed their bond? The taxi stopped at the park's edge. Jake stepped out slowly, his legs shaky from both weakness and nervousness. The sounds of the event washed over him. Laughter, conversations, music, and the occasional bark of dogs. He stood for a moment, overwhelmed by the display of community support that had grown from his and Buddy's story. Several people noticed his arrival, and a ripple of recognition moved through the crowd. Clara, who had been photographing the event, spotted him first. She lowered her camera and approached carefully, understanding the delicacy of the moment. "He's here," she said simply, gesturing toward a quiet corner of the park where Mr. Thompson sat with Buddy. Jake moved through the parting crowd, each step measured and deliberate. Faces turned to watch him, but he remained focused on his destination. The world seemed to narrow to a single point, the space where his best friend waited, unaware of his approach. Some of the veterans present recognized the look in Jake's eyes, the mix of hope and fear familiar to those who had experienced profound reunion moments. Mr. Thompson noticed Jake's approach first. The old man's expression softened with understanding as he watched the veteran make his way closer. He had grown to love Buddy over their short time together, but he had always known this moment would come. His role had been temporary, a bridge between separation and reunion. Buddy dozed in the grass near Mr. Thompson's feet, his ears occasionally twitching at the sounds of the event. The breeze carried familiar scents across the park, but he hadn't yet caught the one that would matter most. Jake paused several feet away, his emotions threatening to overwhelm him. The moment hung suspended, like a breath held too long. Then the wind shifted. Buddy's head lifted suddenly, his nose working the air. His entire body tensed, and his eyes began scanning the crowd with new intensity. The change in his demeanor was immediate and profound. Even those who had spent the past week with him could see the difference. This wasn't the same dog who had been accepting gentle pets and treats moments ago. For Jake, time seemed to stop. He watched as Buddy rose to his feet, turning slowly toward him. Their eyes met across the remaining distance, and in that moment, all the fears about recognition and changed bonds disappeared. The connection that had sustained them both through dark nights and difficult days remained unbroken, perhaps even strengthened by their separation. The moment Buddy spotted Jake, everything else faded into background noise. The dog's entire body quivered with recognition, his tail beginning a slow wag that quickly built to an enthusiastic blur. For a heartbeat, he remained frozen, as if ensuring this wasn't another false hope, another ambulance that wouldn't contain his person. Then Buddy moved. He didn't run. He launched himself forward with such force that people nearby stepped back in surprise. His path to Jake cut straight through the crowd, weaving between legs and around obstacles with single-minded determination. The gathering crowd fell silent, collectively holding their breath as they watched the reunion unfold. Jake dropped to his knees, arms outstretched, heedless of his recent medical condition. Buddy crashed into him with enough force to rock him backward, but Jake held firm. The dog's whole body wiggled with joy as he tried to lick every inch of Jake's face, whining and making small yipping sounds that spoke volumes about the depth of his emotion. "I'm here, Buddy. I'm here," Jake repeated, his voice thick with emotion. His fingers buried themselves in Buddy's fur, feeling the solid reality of his friend's presence. Tears flowed freely down his face, but for the first time in years, they were tears of joy rather than pain or anxiety. The crowd's response built slowly. First a few sniffs and quiet AWS, then scattered applause that grew into a thunderous celebration. Clara captured the moment with her camera, though her own vision was blurred by tears. The photographs would later become symbols of hope and loyalty, shared across the world as testament to the power of unconditional love. Mr. Thompson watched from his spot, dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief. His temporary guardianship of Buddy had helped heal some of his own wounds, reminding him that love never truly dies. It just finds new forms. Several of the young volunteers who had helped search for Buddy gathered around him, offering silent support. Once the initial burst of emotion settled, Jake looked up to find himself surrounded by a community he hadn't known existed a week ago. Clara stepped forward first, introducing herself as the photographer who captured Buddy's chase. Jake struggled to find words adequate to thank her, but she waved off his attempts, indicating that witnessing this moment was thanks enough. Mr. Thompson approached next, supported by Sarah Chun. Jake listened intently as the old man described how he and Buddy had found each other in the park, how they had helped each other through lonely nights. The veteran's eyes filled with fresh tears as he realized how many people had cared for Buddy in his absence. "Thank you," Jake managed, his voice cracking. "All of you. I never." He trailed off, overwhelmed by the magnitude of support around him. Buddy pressed closer to his side, offering the steady presence that had helped Jake through countless difficult moments before. The crowd responded with warm smiles and nods of understanding. Veterans in attendance stepped forward to share their contact information, offering support and friendship. Local business owners who had contributed to the fundraiser approached with cards and offers of assistance. The community that had formed around Buddy's story was making it clear that neither he nor Jake would face future challenges alone. Sarah presented Jake with a folder containing information about the funds raised and the support services available to him. The amount collected far exceeded anyone's expectations, enough to cover his medical bills and establish a foundation for future veteran dog support programs. As the celebrations continued around them, Jake sat on the grass with Buddy pressed against his side. Mr. Thompson joined them, sharing stories about his own beloved Max. The three of them formed a quiet center in the midst of the joyous chaos, each understanding that sometimes the strongest bonds are forged in the paces between words. While the celebration continued around them, Clara's phone buzzed with an encrypted email. She stepped away from the crowd to read it, her journalistic instincts triggered by the sender's anonymity. The message was brief but disturbing. "Check Jake Matthews' military record. Operation Shadowfall, Kandahar, 2019. Not everything is as it seems." Clara's initial instinct was to delete the message. The timing felt deliberately malicious, attempting to taint a moment of pure joy. However, years of investigative reporting had taught her to follow every lead, no matter how uncomfortable. She glanced back at Jake, watching him interact with Buddy and the crowd, seeing nothing but genuine emotion in his expressions. Moving to a quiet corner, Clara shared the message with Mr. Thompson. The old man's expression grew serious as he read it. His years working in local government had given him access to various contacts, including those in military circles. "We need to be careful," he advised, his voice low. "But we also need to know the truth." Together, they began a discreet investigation. Mr. Thompson reached out to old contacts while Clara used her media resources. Information came back in pieces, redacted documents, whispered conversations, fragments of a story that seemed to grow darker with each revelation. Operation Shadowfall had been classified, but rumors persisted about a mission gone wrong. The details they uncovered painted a complex picture. Jake had been part of a special operations unit in Kandahar. During a high-stakes mission, something had gone catastrophically wrong, resulting in civilian casualties. The official records were heavily redacted, but suggested Jake had made a decision that saved his unit while compromising the mission's original objectives. Mr. Thompson's military contacts filled in more details. Jake had been following orders, but the weight of the consequences had broken something in him. He'd received an honorable discharge shortly after, diagnosed with severe PTSD. The military had covered up the true nature of the incident to avoid controversy, leaving Jake to carry the burden alone. Clara struggled with the information. The story they had been telling, of a loyal dog and his wounded veteran owner, remained true, but now carried layers of complexity they hadn't anticipated. She watched Jake from across the park, seeing how he tensed slightly at sudden noises, how Buddy instinctively moved closer when his anxiety spiked. The investigation revealed that Jake had indeed withdrawn from his former life, moving to Boston to escape the memories and guilt. Buddy had found him during this period of self-imposed exile, becoming not just a companion, but a lifeline. The dog's unconditional acceptance had helped Jake cope with the weight of his past decisions. Mr. Thompson, processing the information through the lens of his own life experience, understood the nuances of the situation. War makes difficult choices inevitable, he mused, watching Jake and Buddy interact with the crowd. It's how we live with those choices that defines us. As they dug deeper, they discovered that Jake had been using his military pension to support various civilian aid organizations in Afghanistan, anonymously trying to make amends for the past. His modest lifestyle wasn't just about financial constraints. It was a choice, allowing him to direct more resources toward helping others. The truth presented Clara and Mr. Thompson with an ethical dilemma. The public had embraced a simpler narrative, one of pure loyalty and friendship. The reality, with its moral complexities and darker undertones, might change how people viewed Jake and, by extension, the entire movement that had grown around his story. Yet as they watched Jake with Buddy, seeing the genuine healing and connection between them, they realized that the core truth remained unchanged. Whatever had happened in Kandahar, Jake was working to rebuild his Ife, helped by the unconditional love of a dog who saw past human concepts of right and wrong. The following day, Clara requested a private meeting with Jake at a quiet cafe near the Common. She had spent a sleepless night wrestling with journalistic ethics and human compassion. Buddy lay at Jake's feet as they sat at a corner table, his presence a steady reminder of what was at stake in this conversation. I received information about Operation Shadowfall. Clara began directly, watching Jake's face closely. The change was immediate. His shoulders tensed, and his hands gripped his coffee cup tighter. Buddy, sensing the shift in his energy, pressed closer to his legs. "How much do you know?" Jake's voice was barely above a whisper. The bustling cafe seemed to fade away as he faced the moment he had long feared. His past, which he had tried so hard to leave behind, had finally caught up with him. Clara laid out what she and Mr. Thompson had discovered. As she spoke, she noticed something unexpected. Rather than denial or defensiveness, Jake showed signs of relief. Years of carrying this secret alone had taken their toll, and somehow, sharing it felt like releasing a long-held breath. "The official reports don't tell the whole story," Jake began, his voice strengthening. He described the impossible choice he had faced in Kandahar. Minutes to decide between following the mission parameters and saving his unit from an ambush. The decision had saved American lives, but resulted in civilian casualties, a weight he had carried ever since. As Jake spoke, Buddy raised his head, placing it gently on Jake's knee. The gesture seemed to give him strength. He continued, explaining how he had spiraled after returning home, how the guilt and PTSD had nearly destroyed him. "Then I found Buddy," he said, scratching behind the dog's ears. "Or maybe he found me." Clara listened as Jake described how Buddy had become more than just a companion. He was a bridge back to humanity. The dog's presence had given him a reason to face each day, to begin making amends through anonymous donations and support for civilian aid programs in Afghanistan. "I've been trying to balance the scales," Jake explained, not to erase what happened, but to create something positive from it. His voice cracked slightly. Buddy showed me that redemption starts with accepting love, even when you don't think you deserve it. The cafe had grown quieter, as if the space itself was holding its breath. Clara realized that the story she had captured wasn't just about a dog chasing an ambulance. It was about the complex journey of healing, about finding light in the darkest places. Buddy, as if understanding the gravity of the moment, stood up and pressed his whole body against Jake's legs. The simple act of loyalty brought tears to both Jake and Clara's eyes. Here was the true heart of the story. Unconditional love that asked no questions about the past. The world knows half the story, Clara finally said. They know about loyalty and love. Maybe they need to know about redemption too. She reached across the table, gently touching Jake's hand. Your story, the whole story, could help other veterans carrying similar burdens. Jake looked down at Buddy, then back at Clara. Tell it, he said quietly. Tell all of it. Maybe someone else needs to know that even after the darkest moments, there's hope. That sometimes it comes with 4 legs and a tail. The story Clara wrote became more than just a viral moment or a feel-good piece about a dog's loyalty. It sparked important conversations about war, trauma, redemption, and the healing power of unconditional love. Jake's honesty about his struggles and his journey toward redemption resonated with veterans nationwide. And through it all, Buddy remained by Jake's side, offering the same unwavering support he had shown in chasing that ambulance. In the end, their story proved that the path to healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about finding the courage to face it, one day at a time, with love as your guide.